Long ago, beyond the dunes of endless gold and under a sky painted in fire and sapphire, stood the kingdom of Solara, a land so prosperous that even its shadows seemed to shimmer. At its heart ruled King Arion, a young monarch with eyes like molten amber and a heart that beat to the rhythm of victory. He was crowned after uniting broken tribes, restoring peace, and conquering every rival who dared challenge his vision. His name became legend, the Lion of Wisdom. But as his power grew, so did the echo of his own voice. And when a man begins to hear only himself, even truth sounds like noise. One morning, as the first sun ray kissed the marble towers of the palace, Arion walked through the royal gardens, once lush and fragrant with roses and jasmine. But that morning the flowers bowed their heads, the leaves were brittle, and the fountains whispered their last drops of water. An old gardener, his beard white as the desert sand, bowed low before him. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "the storm that passed has wounded the soil. If we do not listen to its cry, the roots will die." The king chuckled. "The roots of this kingdom are my will," he said, "and my will does not break." The gardener lowered his eyes, whispering a truth too quiet for pride to hear. Even a king's will cannot command the rain. Days turned into weeks. The sun grew fierce, the rivers thinned, and the people's laughter faded into whispers of worry. Farmers came to the palace, pleading for water. Merchants begged for relief as caravans returned empty. But Arion's pride turned every plea into an insult. He built deeper wells, stronger dams, and sent soldiers to seize grain from neighboring lands. He believed that strategy could replace humility. And yet, the more he fought nature, the more nature seemed to fight back. The winds howled through the nights, not in rage, but in warning. Still, Arion did not listen. One evening, as the crimson sun melted into the horizon, a lone monk appeared at the palace gates. He wore a simple gray robe and carried nothing but a small clay bowl of water, untouched, clear, and still. The guards laughed. "What can a beggar bring to a king who owns rivers?" But the monk only smiled. Rivers can dry, wisdom does not. When King Arion was told about him, he demanded the monk be brought in. The hall of gold glittered like the sun itself as the king sat upon his high throne. The monk bowed deeply and said, "Great king, you have conquered men, but you have not yet conquered yourself." Arion frowned. "Speak clearly, old man." The monk lifted his clay bowl and whispered, "This bowl is like your kingdom, full but fragile. If you pour more into it without balance, it will overflow and be lost." The court fell silent. The king rose and said with a smirk, "You dare lecture me with riddles? I am the ruler of Solara. My words shape destiny." The monk replied calmly, "Then listen to your destiny as it begins to whisper against you." That night the skies turned strange. Lightning danced in silence. The earth cracked open like old parchment. The fountains burst dry, not from thirst but from despair. Arion ran to his balcony and saw his city dim, its torches flickering in fear. And in that dreadful silence, he heard something, faint but unmistakable, the whisper of the old gardener's voice carried by the wind. "Listen, before silence becomes your only answer." For the first time, the mighty king trembled. His crown suddenly felt heavier than ever before. The next dawn, Arion left his throne and walked through his dying kingdom. The fields were barren, the wells cracked, and the people, the very soul of his reign, stood hopeless. He found the old gardener kneeling beside a dying sapling, watering it with the last few drops from his flask. Arion approached quietly, his armor covered in dust, his crown left behind. "What can I do?" he asked, voice breaking. The old man smiled gently. "You can listen." "Listen to whom?" the king asked. "To everyone. To the wind, the soil, the cries of your people, and to your own heart, which you buried beneath your pride." In that moment, the king finally understood. For all his victories, he had been deaf to the greatest wisdom of all, humility. Weeks passed. The king began to change. He gathered farmers, scholars, healers, and even children in the royal court. He listened, not to respond, but to understand. He reopened the old wells, replanted the forests, and returned grain to the poor. And one day, as the people worked together, dark clouds gathered above Solara for the first time in months. Raindrops fell, softly at first, then endlessly, soaking the land, cleansing the pride, and reviving every root. The people rejoiced, shouting through the storm, "Long live King Arion, the one who listens." The old gardener smiled under the rain, whispering, "The earth only listens to those who listen first." Years later, when Arion's reign was remembered in songs and scrolls, he was no longer called the Lion of Wisdom. He was known as the king who learned to listen, because true wisdom does not roar, it listens. A proud heart closes the door to truth, but a humble ear opens the gates to wisdom. Even the greatest rulers fall when they stop listening to the smallest voices.